וסיישכוי בסויך אשר דיברתו
Shabbos, and usually on Motzei Shabbos you wish people a good tavach, but on Tisha B'Av you're not really supposed to greet, certainly not in the first part of the day. But it's so special because, Chilu, you remember 2 years ago we had to cancel because of COVID. Last year we barely got through it, and thank God we're building up again this year, and I know there's a lot of people watching online through YouTube, so I want to thank them for joining, and Dovi for being here, and of course Chilu and the Mizamrim. It's very special to have you. I want to begin by the same story that I've told in every Kumzits. It's very short, but also with a very important message. The story is told of a man that was looking for a job, and he couldn't find, he was in Yiddish, you say, lo yutzlach. He just couldn't find a job, no matter where he went. So finally, he went to the Rebbe in the shtetl, and he said to him, Rebbe, I need a job. The Rebbe says, I have nothing. He comes back home. His wife says to him, listen, the only person that can help you in this town is the Rebbe. Go back to him and say, I'm not leaving till you give me a job. So he comes back, and he says to the Rebbe, I need a job, otherwise I'm going to be unemployed, and also my wife will divorce me. You got to help me. So the Rebbe says, there's only one job I can think of. He says, I can give you a job to go to the very end of the town, and there's a home there, and you climb up on the second floor, and you'll sit, and your job will be to look out for Mashiach. So he looks at the Rebbe, he's like, is this a real job? He says, yeah, the job is you're going to look out for Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, you're going to ring the bell. Right? They didn't have WhatsApp groups and Facebook and everything. And you're going to let everybody know that Mashiach is here. So the guy listens. He's like, well, it's better than having no job. So how much does this pay? He says, 50 rubles a month. He says, 50 rubles a month doesn't sound so great. But again, it's better than what I have. So he says, fine, Rabbi, I'm taking the job. When do you start tomorrow? Comes home. He says to his wife, I want to tell you, I got this job. What's the job? He tells her. The rabbi told me I'm going to go to the end of the house, end of the town. I'm going to climb upstairs, and I'm going to look out every day for Mashiach. So she says to him, is this a joke? He said, no, it's serious. And how much does it pay? 50 rubles. She says to him, 50 rubles a month? That's no money. He says, yes, but the work is steady. Says the Rebbe to the crowd. That's the story of looking for Mashiach. Everybody says they're waiting for salvation. Mashiach should come. We read today in the Haftarah. But how many people are really ready that if Mashiach walked in through the door, and by the way, I'm sure that in Eretz Yisrael you'll start in Har HaZeisim, but in America you'll start at Park East Synagogue. If he walked through the door right now, Chilu, and said, this moment, are we ready to go from here straight to Yerushalayim? Everybody has some business that they need to wrap up. The point is, we're praying for Mashiach. We should actually be waiting for him. So, Rachim.
Yeah.
Rachim b'chazdech alamecho su'eleinu aletziyoi ishtani levoikecho Special guest here tonight. This young man didn't just show up. I mean, he didn't show up on here. I invited him. His name is Nissim Sal. Nissim Sal is one of the greatest new talents in the world of cantorial music. So we started to sing Rachim. We'll sing again the first line of the chorus, and then I'd like you, Nissim, to add a little bit of chazanas to this. Okay? You ready? Rachim echazdecho
David Meshiachecho V'yala Bayis HaGadol V'yavako Edoi Shenikero Allah
Privileged to have tonight with us Rabbi Schneier in person and Mr. Schneier, who just came back from a trip to Europe. So I want to ask Rabbi to say a few words to us tonight at the Kumzits, and we'll follow up with the song.
Baruch Hashem, thank God. We are privileged not only to see Yerushalayim on the screen, but actually all it takes is a reservation on any flight. We can go. It's ours. I still remember standing with Prime Minister Rabin, 3,000 year anniversary of Yerushalayim. And what we're saying today, Yerushalayim is the eternal capital of Medinat Israel, the eternal capital of Medinat Israel. Never mind about the different plans and so forth, but I want to thank Cantor Benny. And where did you discover this marvelous talent? Where are you going to be for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? Huh? Do we have a deal, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? Anyhow, basically we're saying we ask Hashem, now that He has shown us the Nes, and just think for a moment, 1967, Rav Goren, at that time head of Tzahal, blowing the shofar when he reached the Kotel, accompanied by Moshe Dayan and Rabin. Okay? So we live to see it. We're privileged. Now we are the guardians that it will remain the eternal capital of Medinat Yisrael. Not only our brothers and sisters in Israel, we here, the largest Jewish community outside the world, we are responsible, American Jews are responsible for the smaller Jewish community's existence. American Jews are responsible for strengthening our brothers and sisters in Israel, particularly now, again, when they're being threatened. So, again, our gratitude for giving us the ruach, the sense of feeling, of being actually at the Kotel. I want to thank you for the Kumzits. Libi b'mizrach. Our hearts are in Yerushalayim. Our hearts are with our brothers and sisters in Israel. And thank you for inspiring us. Thank you, Kol Tuv and Bismachot, for years to come.
Ani mamen, ani mamen, ani mamen. Hey, be'emunah shelema. Hey, be'iyas ha-Moshiach, be'iyas ha-Moshiach, ani mamen. Hey, be'iyas ha-Moshiach, be'iyas ha-Moshiach, ani mamen. Join me, ani mamen, ani mamen, ani mamen. Be'emunah shelema, be'iyas ha-Moshiach, be'iyas ha-Moshiach, ani mamen. Ani mamen, ani mamen, ani mamen. Be'emunah shelema, be'iyas
composed on the way to Auschwitz. Was this song composed? And every time I sing this song, every time I hear somebody singing this song, what runs through my mind is what went on in the minds of all these neshamas that were at that time on that train, not knowing what's going to happen in the next couple of minutes with their life. So for those neshamas who lost their lives, and for those neshamas who we don't know where they are buried, let's sing the high part again. Le'ilu nishmas, all these neshamas. Oh yeah, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah sheleimo, be'vias HaMoshiach, be'vias HaMoshiach ani ma'amin. Yafalpi Shismameya im kol zeh ani ma'amin. Im kol zeh achakei b'chol yom
actually comes from the words Mim Kaimcha, which is one of the most famous, I would say, Karlebach songs that are sung throughout the world in Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Hasidim. It's a very powerful melody and people connect to it. In 2017, when my mother, Aleh Shalom, passed away, and it was something you know was very sudden, Erev Pesach, out of the blue, and I know, Chilo, you've been through the same sort of experience. So I made, as we stood at the kever at the cemetery and we were burying her, I made a neder that I wouldn't miss Kaddish. Now, some of you will say, what do you mean you made a promise? You and said, that's the very, of course, you're not going to miss Kaddish. I mean, which child would miss saying Kaddish for a parent? But my promise was that I wouldn't miss Kaddish 3 times a day, number one. And number two, some of you know that I travel a lot to Israel. My children are in Israel. My family, extended family, is in Israel. And very often when you travel to Israel, depending what flights you take, sometimes you can make a minyan, sometimes you can't, sometimes you miss. And you know, Orthodox Jews, when they get on the plane, the first thing they do, we need a minyan. You can't daven in the airport. You got to wait till the plane takes off. Everybody needs a minyan. Food service can wait. So, but anyway, I made this promise. And I'm proud to say that for the most part, I managed to find a minyan in the most strange of places over the summer in Palm Springs, through Satma, by the way. I never knew the Rebbe goes to Palm Springs. I'm stuck on the side of the road, and 10 Chassidim pass in a van. They're like, can we help you? I'm like, I don't need help with the car. I just need help with the minyan. We got a minyan, and so on and so forth. But by far, the most powerful moment of a minyan experience that I had happened on a flight, United 91, traveling from Newark to Israel. United 91 usually leaves at 4 o'clock, so I figured I would daven mincha on the Lower East Side, where I got a minyan at MTJ. Mariv I would find on the plane, and Shachris I would find in Israel or on the plane. So I get to the airport, and I look around, and the first thing you want to know is, is there any Orthodox Jews that can join the minyan? And I have to tell you, I don't know what happened. This flight was full of like an Arab pilgrimage. They don't do so much travel in El Al, so they were going United. And I'm thinking to myself, they could pray, but they can't really be part of the minyan. And what am I going to do? And I'm just so worked up about it that the first time I'm going to miss minyan is going to be on a flight to Israel. And we take off, and by luck, as I think you could say, I was upgraded. I was supposed to sit in Economy Plus, and I was upgraded to row 5. For all of those that know where row 5 is a very good seat in business class, but it's especially good because in 5F, they always leave row 5F empty, and it's left for the pilot. The pilot comes out, and they usually switch, and that's where the pilot sits for a few hours. So as soon as we take off, I'm up and down, and I'm looking for minyan, and the way I'm counting it, I'm close, but there's just not number 10. The pilot comes out about 4 hours into the flight. He sits down. I think he wants to sleep, and he sees me up and down, up and down. He says to me, is everything okay? Are you a nervous flyer? I said, well, it happens to be I'm a nervous flyer, but that's not what I'm nervous about. He says, well, tell me. I'm thinking to myself, what, the pilot? I mean, what's he going to know? So I said to him, I have to tell you that my mom passed away, and I'm trying to make a minyan. And for a minyan, you need 10 men. And he stops me and he says, I know. He says, I'm a Reformed Jew. I live in Texas. My mom died 2 years ago. And I didn't say Kaddish 3 times a day. I said Kaddish once a day. And what I did was I changed my route. Instead of traveling international, I only traveled local, which took me to the furthest flight 6.5 hours. And so I always managed to find some sort of service in either Reform Temple, Conservative, Orthodox. He says, I don't really know how to pray, but I know how to say Kaddish. I'm going to help you. I'm like, listen, if this is not my mother smiling upon me from heaven. So the pilot now walks up and down. And when the pilot walks up and down, people respond. So how he did it, I don't know. We had 4 or 5 Chassidim. There was me. There was Chassidim. That's right, exactly. And the pilot who makes the minyan, and he found 1 or 2 other people. Now we get to the back of the galley. He asks the stewardesses to clear for a few moments. And together we daven Mariv. But what was, by the way, very cute is he said to me when I was about to start, I had said to him that I'm a cantor. He says, look, I looked on the radar, in about 20 to 30 minutes, we're going to be hitting some turbulence. So your cantorial music, leave for the synagogue. Here on the plane, just say Kaddish and let's move with it. But anyway, it took us 10 minutes and we davened. But I was thinking to myself, it's amazing. First of all, where you could meet a Jew, anywhere you go. Fine, it happened to be that we were going to Israel. But this pilot could have also been not Jewish. And the fact that he honored his mother's memory, and so now, in some ways, he was paying it back and helping me. So I say this, we talk about Mimkom Chamalkeinu. We all want to go to Israel. It's where our hearts are, and we say it so many times, as Rabbi said, today you can call an hour in an hour, you could be on a plane, you could be going to Israel. It's a tremendous thing, but going to Israel is not enough. You have to feel that you're in Israel. You have to feel that you care about the land, that it's meaningful to you. So I can tell you, for me at least, this trip in 2017 on United was something that I will not forget.
I share with the Olam a story that happened and has never been told. 2 weeks ago, I went to Muncie, which most of you know where Muncie is. I walk into a bakery in Muncie. Behind the counter stands a young fellow, long blonde hair. And he says, "You're Chilu Posen?" I said, "Yeah." He comes out from behind the counter. There was a whole line of people waiting to pay. And people are starting to scream, "Hey, where are you going?" He says, "You'll wait." He comes out to the front, gives me the best hug I've ever gotten in my life. Like a real teddy bear hug. And I'm like, "And you are?" He says, "I'll explain." He tells me, "I was raised in Williamsburg. My father is a South Mengaman. And I used to live in your neighborhood, and he hasn't at that time told me his name. He says, I lived in your neighborhood, and I used to walk on Friday night, I used to walk my dog. And every time you saw me, you said Gichavas to me. And I always said to myself, why is this guy saying Gichavas? And then I got piercings and I got tattoos. And I moved out of my father's house, but I still stayed in that neighborhood where you lived. And every time you saw me, you never missed a day or a time that you saw me and you didn't say hello to me. It's 2.5 years later. I haven't touched in the last 6 months drugs. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm going to a rehab. He said, and I'll always remember the person that never pushed me away from his community. And that was you. And all of you, you should clap now, he says to all of the people that are standing and waiting to pay. He says, this guy deserves a round of applause. I said, it's very good that it happened 2 weeks before I'm going to be in Parky's Synagogue on Tisha B'Av night, this story, because now I have something to tell. What is the Churban? Why was the Beis Hamikdash Churb? Because there wasn't love between Achenu B'nai Yisrael. You see a brother in pain. You see a brother even in a simcha. Just say hello. Give a smile. Like Max. Max just said hi. See, you understand? You got the message right away. Don't ever let a brother fall. No matter if he wears a kippah sruga or he wears a samet and a kapo with a große Tschul on top, they call it. A yid is within. So since we're sitting all together, so let's sing for our brothers in Ukraine, for our brothers at the other end of the world, wherever they are, and they are in pain. Nesinim batzara ubashivya, bein bayam, bein bayabosha. What are we asking for? Hamokam yirachem aleim. So let's sing together, and Nissim is going to pick the key for this one. One, one, one.
First of all, Chila, that was a beautiful story. I want to recognize our president, Herman Hochberg, not only for being here tonight, but for everything he did during COVID to keep this synagogue open. Those of you who live in Manhattan know how many synagogues, you wouldn't believe this, Chila, were closed not just 2 or 3 months, a year and a half, and some have even now not fully returned to services. But it was thanks to Herman Hochberg and Rabbi Schneider together and the board that believed in reopening, and Baruch Hashem we did, and we're here. So thank you, Herman. It's very special to have you here. I want to also recognize our good friend Richard Seaman. Richard is a dentist, but he also moonlights as a Broadway, on-Broadway, off-Broadway singer. So I want to ask Richard to come forward and to say or sing something for us on this very special night.
I thought you were going to ask him to come forward and pull a tooth.
That might be easier for me, actually. Oh, it's an honor to be here. It's always an honor to sing and to be part of anything that Cantor Benny puts together, and this is really something beyond, I think, all of our expectations. And it really offers a lot of consolation on a very trying and challenging time in the Jewish calendar. Hear our prayers, see our plight. Through the darkness, shed your light. Please rebuild our temple to its site. Renew our days as of old, Yerushalayim of gold, and we won't have to ask. Eicha, Eicha, tragic, mournful day, Eicha, Eicha, Eicha. How can it be, Eicha? Both our temples were destroyed. Till this day we feel the void. Oh, how can it be, Eicha? Yerushalayim, once teeming with life, now in ruins, engulfed in such strife. Hear our prayers, see our plight. Through the darkness, shed your light. Please rebuild the temple in its sight.
There's a concept in davening, in Nusach HaTfilah, called minyan, where you mention or you bring in an idea of Nusach of the next coming davening. So for example, on a regular Shabbos, if you have Rosh Chodesh, how do you end off? Baruch atah Hashem Avorech Samo Yisrael B'Shalom. You always introduce what's coming up next. It's the same concept in music and Yontif. So the next holiday, Mi'etz Hashem, from this we will get up, and hopefully Mashiach will come and take us to Eretz Yisrael. What's the next holiday? Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And to introduce that, we have Slichas. So I see here tonight my good friend Max. And I know, Max, one of your favorite nigunim is Machnisi Rachmim. So I want you to come up with us and sing with us Machnisi Rachmim, which is the prayer that we ask God that all the prayers that we are sending up to heaven, the angels should package them for us and take them up to God and beseech on behalf of us and the entire community. So Max, please do us the honor, sit with us as we wrap up and sing Machnisi Rachmim and then Shibana Beis HaMikdash.
Take over.
Achnis rachameyenu lifnei barachamim shmiyei teyoko shmiyu tzakoseyenu lifnei shoyem yateyoko Machni Yisaydim Nisodim Oisevayinu Misatze Minemoy Machni Yisaydim Nisodim Oisevayinu moment, we're going to wrap up by singing Sheyibana Beis Hamikdash, which is the penultimate song that everybody sings about the rebuilding of the temple. But I see here a very good man, a very good couple, Minna and Mark Seidelman. I want to tell you, Chilu, you just told a story from 2.5 weeks ago, which is so true, about saying hello to people. About 10 days ago, we have a wonderful woman who works in the shul. Her name is Toby Einsteinler. I don't think she's here, but I believe she's watching. And Toby calls me and she says, there's a name of a member who we can say because it's not a private story. Her name is Rose Katz. I haven't seen her in shul for 3 weeks. So I said, okay, you know, a lot of people are away. They go to the Hamptons. She says, no, Rose Katz is not going to the Hamptons. She's in her upper 90s. And if I haven't seen her, there's an issue. So I was like, okay, let's move to the next thing. You know, I'm sure she'll be back in a week or two. We'll figure it out. But Toby didn't give up. She calls the house. Nobody answers. She doesn't have any children. So she calls the doorman. She says to the doorman, what's going on? Do you know where Rose is? He says, what do you mean? You don't know what happened to Rose? Rose was found in her apartment. She had died 3 weeks ago. And she's now lying for the last 3 weeks in the morgue, unclaimed, because there's no children. There's one brother who's even older than her, must be close to 100. And he's like, in about a week, you know what the policy is, they take, the city, I think, keeps it for 30 or 45 days, and then they bury a person in Potter's Field. It's not a death or a burial that I wish for my worst enemies. So right away, Toby calls me back, and I call my friend Mark Seidelman, who is involved with the Free Burial Society. And this man turned the world upside down between misaskim, between getting the city examiner to release the body, because who are we? We're not the next of kin. Between getting into the apartment and listening to messages, she still had the old kind of machine in the house. You know where you had the cassette and people left messages? By the way, you only see those in the museum. But that's what she had. And so we had to hear messages to see if we could reach anyone. And thank God, through the effort of a lot of people, we found out on a Tuesday last week, and on Thursday she got buried, barely 10 people, upstate in a cemetery next to her 2 children who had died before her. And I said to myself, you know, you never know. A person's neshama, even when it's lying 3 weeks in a morgue, but it's crying out. Somebody there had a schus to get Mark involved, and Minna, and the Free Burial Society, and Toby. And together, as a community, we came together. So I don't know if we're going to Israel tonight or tomorrow, but I know that these sort of community building efforts, where one looks out for the other, that's the first step before you even get on the El Al plane. There's a beautiful song from Shlomo Carlebach, Leman Achai V'Rei. Because of my brothers and friends, due to my brothers and friends, I sing and I speak to you peace. Let's sing that into Sheyibana Beis Hamikdash.
למען החי ונאיו למען החי ונאיו אדברונו because of my brothers and friends, I will sing to you a song of peace. This is the house of the Lord. Peace to you. This is the house of Hashem. Peace to you. Lemay Hashem.
that get the least credit is the person who plays the piano and the voice teacher. Why? Because the person, the voice teacher, you never see what they do. They do it privately in a room. And the pianist, people don't realize how important they are for the vocalist. Chilu and the Mezamrim do because they're singing all day. And so when you get the wrong key, it ain't so simple. But I want to say in this shul, a man that is so important to us is standing right there on the right, Dovi Abraham, together with Schneer. And I want to explain to you why. Not because he does projection. That's the sideshow. For 2.5 years during COVID, this man has been with us almost daily. In the time where you were all sitting at home, even in Williamsburg, they were sitting at home. They didn't go anywhere. Right at the beginning, in March and April of 2020, he was here in the shul setting up live streams. We would go out to funerals where only I and Dovi were at the funeral. The family wasn't allowed to go. He would hook up in the cemetery, this setup, with cameras, and I would bury the dead for people, Nebuch, who couldn't make it because there was a time where there was a restriction of one family members, and certain cemeteries didn't even allow any family members besides the Chevra Kadisha. You cannot imagine how many events we did together, from weddings to concerts to funerals. Lahavdil, Chilu came here when we were closed, remember? We recorded an entire Friday night davening. They got dressed up with, I don't know if any of you were there, Dovi was there, you were on the piano, and you understand, an empty shul, and we're trying to simulate a Friday night davening. And Chilo had his little mic, and he was whispering to them, yeah, with kavan, and put your heart in it. Like,
I met a person last week. He says that he still turns on every Friday night the Kabbalah Shabbos.
that we did. Bein Hashmoshes.
Exactly.
Right.
It was funnier him being in a cemetery with Dovi Abraham inside that, yeah.
But I just want to say, so Dovi really gets a tremendous amount of credit, and all of you, Chilu and the Mezamrim, for the singing, the music that you brought us during days where we were stuck at home. So I said we end with Sheibana Beis Hamikdash. So Chilu, please, would you lead us into Sheibana together with our friend Nissim?
So you guys pick a key that both of you are going to be comfortable with, and okay, so is that key good?
It's going to be good.
Beis Hamikdash, Himeira beyameinu, b'seichel keilo, b'zoira sebecha. Ya ba 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 ba, Sheibane Beis Hamikdash, Himeira beyameinu, b'seichel keilo, b'zoira sebecha. Yehi Yerutzoy. Yehi Yerutzoy. Yehi Yerutzoy. Yehi Shivone Beisamidos, Bimeiro Beyomedo, Zeichel Keino, Soiro Serbedo, Beisamidos, Bimeiro Beyomedo, Zeichel Keino, Soiro
Beautiful. I want to thank Chilo. I want to thank
And I want to thank Benny,
Nisim Sal.
and of course, listen.
Emietz Hashem, next year we will do this in Israel. Dovi, you can cut out.